Nick Nattarella, how are you doing, my friend?
Very well. How you doing, Jim?
I am living the dream. Thank you so much for joining me. So, you are the founder of AdWise.
Correct.
I get
AdWise Creative. Yep.
AdWise Creative. I get your emails all the time, and I have to commend you.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
they're timely, they're frequent, they're educational, and I'll say this: they're not too salesy. Okay, so
Good.
it's good content. But what I love about them also, and I've said this before, at the bottom there's no reason why I can't reach you because you have all
Mm,
these great links down there.
mhm.
So it's a great product. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about what you do and how you help your clients?
Well, the biggest thing is, we've got such a huge revolution now going on in especially when it comes to video. When it comes to video advertising used to be the domain of the Fortune 500 with billion-dollar budgets, and now folks can literally take this little black rectangle out of their back pocket, press a little red button, and they're all of a sudden shooting videos. And a lot of these videos, quite frankly, are really close to Hollywood quality. These cameras now, these digital cameras are really cranking out some really good stuff. Now, it's that world that people are turning to. I want to say it was back in 2017, Oracle came out with a prediction that by 2025, 80% of all content online or the purpose people are going to be looking for video,
Yes.
80% by 2025. We hit 82% back in 2022.
Wow.
So not only was Oracle, did they nail it, but they actually said, well, let's not go out on a limb here. But it hit 3 years earlier than they predicted. So absolutely online has just become, especially video, and this puts the power in the mom and pop shop.
Mhm.
All the way, I mean, you could have one employee, you could have 50, 100, 200, 500 employees. You still have the power of video and can leverage it so easily in this day and age. It's absolutely amazing.
So video's been around for some time. It came out in the 40s in terms of television, and it became
Mhm.
quite popular in the 50s. And since then, you know the history of television. They said it was going to kill radio. We'll get to that in a moment. I don't think video has killed the radio star quite yet.
Not
And
yet.
so television is still a thing,
Yep.
but you're right. Online video is a huge thing, so big that the largest search engine company a number of years ago decided to buy YouTube, which,
Yeah.
from what I've heard, is the second biggest search engine. I
Mhm.
use it all the time to search. I also use it for my business to get my message out. But let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
If you're producing video as a small business, how do you get the right eyeballs on it versus television? With TV, back when you and I were young, there were 3 major networks: ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Correct.
Everybody knew what Dallas was. Everybody knew what the Dukes of Hazzard was. Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, everybody. But there are TV shows today that some people haven't heard of because there's so many different networks just for TV. But how about the individual who's trying to get their message out on video in this vast array of online apps?
Right.
Isn't it
Right.
hard to be found?
Yes and no.
Ah,
If you're going to just try and smile in the dark, yeah, that's going to be kind of difficult. You may have had the best orthodontist and the best dentist and the best teeth whitening, but if you're smiling in the dark, it really doesn't matter what you've
yeah.
done. Now, the kicker is there is the other great thing about the internet is the plain and simple fact that it helps you connect to the right people if you know how to leverage it.
Yes.
And the analogy I like to use all the time is nobody wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning and goes, oh my gosh, I need a swimming pool. Nobody wakes up thinking that they need X product out of nowhere.
Mhm.
There is this little seed that's been dropped, whether it's somebody in the neighborhood, or maybe your neighbor has got a pool and your kids are always going over there, or maybe you see something on TV, or the Y is running their special, and there's a swimming classes there and all kinds of stuff. Wouldn't it be nice to have something in the backyard? And when somebody starts to get that little itch, no matter what it is, whether it's a washer and dryer or the latest Mexican restaurant or something, or even a swimming pool, when they start searching for it online, they're hunting for answers. They've got questions. They want to know what's going on. And if you can cater your content to what they're actually searching for, now you have found the audience that needs you.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up swimming pools. Ha have we talked about this book, They Ask You Answer,
I
by
think
Marcus
we did.
Sheridan?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, and by the way, if you Google Jim Klauck and Marcus Sheridan, you'll see some interviews he and I have done. And so the whole idea, there it is. Okay, so the whole
We both
idea
have them within arm's reach.
the whole idea behind They Ask You Answer is answering frequently asked questions the homeowner may ask, being that expert, being the authority before someone engages with you by
Right.
filling out a form or calling you. And you and I both do this in our businesses for clients.
Mhm.
And it just makes so much sense today. Instead of doing willy-nilly stuff by taking your iPhone and shooting some video and maybe or may not maybe or maybe not posting it, or yeah, I don't know what people are doing. Having a system like They Ask You Answer is really the way to go. If you're familiar with the book, everybody, Marcus Sheridan will basically teach you how to do it yourself. But that can be kind of expensive though, because you have to hire a videographer. And it could cost you over 100 grand a year by the time you have equipment and you have staff to do it. And then you, as that business owner, have to manage that employee who's doing that. And
Right.
that can be a little challenging. And Marcus and I have talked about that. And there are other solutions. I offer one where, I interview them on my radio show and we put it online, and you've got solutions as well. It's really the way to go today for almost any company, 'cause, Nick, don't you agree, whether you're doing 100,000 a year or 100,000,000, you or someone at your company can actually do some type of video and put it up online.
Absolutely. And, the joke is 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have a 9-year-old in your life, whether it's a grandkid or a neighbor kid or something like that, that can help you shoot, edit, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's this younger generation that has just taken to any kind of electronics,
Yep.
whether it's an iPhone or a massive, I mean, digital cameras look just like the camera I grew up on. They do not operate like the camera I grew up
Oh,
on.
yes.
There's more
Agreed.
electronics in that camera
Yep.
than probably the space shuttle.
Yes.
And it just, I mean, it just absolutely blows my mind what cameras can do these days. And it's all very attainable. Like I said, that she used to be the domain of the Fortune 500 with millions of dollars, with budgets in the millions of dollars. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Agreed, but it's not just being able to shoot video, it's what the content is. It has to
Yes.
resonate with your prospect, with your customer, because quite honestly, I rather watch a poorly produced video with great content than a beautiful looking video with poor content.
Exactly. And you know what, the cliche in Hollywood, and this is just to give you an idea, it's actually, I've heard it 2 ways. Audio is 51% of the movie, or they'll say
51%.
audio is 80% of the movie. What they're doing is they're giving the nod to what you think is a visual medium. If your audio, more people will bail on bad audio than they will on bad video. And like you said, if the topic isn't right, I'm gone
Sure, yeah.
before the scratchy video makes me turn it off. So you've got that other element out there. Now, I mean, there are times, I turn to YouTube and I look up stuff on, if something, you and I were just talking just before we hit record, talking about our tractors being down. and
Mhm.
having to do some repairs, and I'll check out YouTube on how to maybe do the next repair. But, the guy who has I literally saw a video where this guy is walking from the house
Mhm.
through the backyard, down by the chickens. It took him literally 7 to 8 minutes just to get to the tractor. And I was like, "Dude, I'm gone. You
Yeah.
have wasted my time." It's getting to the point, making it relevant, making it real, and making sure that it's exactly what the potential client, is looking for
No,
and matching up with their expectations.
absolutely. And so there is a there is a process. I recommend people pick up this book.
Yes.
And if you have any questions, you can get a hold of Nick or me. Nick's information's in the show notes. Um, so video's big, but that radio is near and dear to my heart. And
Mine as well.
I know. I grew up with radio as a child. I still listen to radio, and I'm on the radio. I do radio shows coast to coast, and I wanted to talk a little bit about radio. We can reminisce a bit, but I also want to talk about the relevance today because a lot of people who are deep in the digital space have forgotten about radio. But
Yeah,
here's
I
what's important.
completely agree.
Yeah. There is a great demographic, especially on conservative talk radio, where I tend to spend most of my time when I'm producing a radio program for my clients. Conservative talk, 50 plus. These people are empty nested,
Gotcha. Mhm.
right? Kids are grown. They have money in the bank. Their house is probably paid off. And so when their air conditioning breaks or their roof is leaking, they
Right,
get it fixed. There's
right.
no excuses. Plus, they're probably retired, which means they're at the home the whole time and there's no other place to be and they want to be comfortable. Agreed?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's really that simple. One of the struggles today is getting people to understand that there is still a great place out there on radio to get your message across. What are your thoughts? You and I are the same age. What are your thoughts on radio from yesterday to today? I mean, am I crazy on that?
No, no, absolutely not. It has changed a little bit, and, the Radio Advertising Bureau, RAB, will come up with their survey every year talking about in any given geographic area, how many people radio still reaches.
Mhm.
And I remember years ago, they would say that, anybody 12 years old and older, you would reach 98.6% of the population in a given week.
Yeah.
Now I think it's down to like 96.7%. I mean, it's come down a little bit.
A little. Yeah, but
Yeah.
not a lot.
Well, remember who's doing the survey. Okay.
Eh,
So
fair enough.
so I'm with you. Okay. I'm just going by what the numbers say, but I'm with you in that particular camp. It has come down quite a bit, but yet people are still referring to it. There was some kind of a there was some kind of a natural disaster or something going on, and somebody tweeted real quick, gosh, if there were only some way that we could get it's kind of like a live podcast where we could get relevant information as it was being put out.
Mm.
And somebody responded to her tweet. It's called radio. Radio is what you're talking about. So there is a need for it. But yeah, there's this generation coming up that doesn't realize that they need it. But like you said, that older generation, 50 plus, they know all about it, and they've got no problems hanging out there, putting it in the background, doing what they wanna do, but having the radio going in the I mean, I put several things, on Facebook that, okay, I got my wrench, I got my car, I got classic rock running. Who wants to stop by and tinker on a car? I mean, that's what you do. You just crank up the classic rock and you work on the car. But it's gotta be a local radio station for some reason. I can't do it on Spotify. I can't do it on some streaming thing. I've gotta have a radio go when I do stuff like that.
Yeah, and certainly it's generational to an extent.
Yeah.
And here's what I want people to understand. People who are, and Nick and I are both 50 plus. Sorry, pal.
Yeah, well,
50 plus.
you're
So
right behind me. So
yeah,
don't
right.
only by a couple months.
Couple months. So you've got the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even people in their 80s are quite often living on their own now. People are living to 100 years old,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna forget about radio. okay? They spend way more time doing the old stuff than the new stuff, especially if they're 70 plus. These people own homes. They have a roof, they have a foundation, they have an electrical system, plumbing and air conditioning,
Right.
amongst other things. They need their kitchen remodeled, whatever. And they still believe in the radio. And speaking of that, to believe everything we see online would be a huge mistake. I am
Right.
getting fooled all the time. And now I'm getting to the point, Nick, where I'm like, I don't know if I can believe anything online because AI can really mess with audio and video. I mean, you can be fooled greatly. The other day, I saw Abraham Lincoln saying he was running for office, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's passed away. So, but it was pretty realistic. But my point is radio is very protected. The government protects it. It's run by the government, the FCC, run by the government. You
Right.
can't do and say certain things on the radio without the station getting a fine, and you could get in trouble if you
Mhm.
say it on the radio yourself. Radio stations will vet you before you're on the radio, and older people trust the radio. They
Mhm.
just trust the radio. A lot of them aren't on social media. The ones that are, hopefully, they're not trusting good old Abe. Honest Abe, I will say, but
Yeah.
is it honest? And it's really kind of a crazy world, and something else too. So I said the government backs radio, and it has. Radio's been around for 105 years. KDKA in Pittsburgh was the first radio station. 105 years ago, the government's behind it. If there's an emergency, like you said, there's this emergency broadcast system, and
Right.
most of us have heard over the decades the testing of it, and sometimes maybe we've actually been involved where they really used it. And they're all linked up together. It's all part of the system. Ironically, though, or I guess as a side to that, the government may be shutting down TikTok. Government has no interest in TikTok other than it may be a problem for our national security. Radio's not.
Right.
And
Well,
and s so it's interesting.
remember, part of the mandate behind radio is to serve the public good.
Yeah.
So it was to get those emergency announcements out there and stuff like that. It also became kind of like, when Eisenhower saw the interstate system over in Europe, he went, "Wait a minute. We need to do something like this." Again, it was for national security. Radio reached certain places that TV that there may have been times when electricity didn't even reach out there, but somebody had a transistor radio.
Yep.
Throw a couple D-cell batteries in that transistor and you can get the message out across the entire country. And radio was kind of the information system like the interstate. It was designed, quite frankly, for national security, just as we were stepping into, what was it called? It's like the Cold War of World War One. So it kind of became that purview, of the government because of that reason. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun with it in the meantime. I mean, think of all the radio dramas back in the 20s and the 30s, and
Right.
everybody sat down around the radio at the end of the day or at dinner time or something like that, or they heard the news or they heard the dramas or they heard the stories and stuff like that. Um, I mean, that's and a little while ago when you were talking about the advertising and what to believe online anymore, that's I kind of see TV, video, something like that, that's their Achilles heel. It looks good, but that's all you get to see.
Mhm.
Whereas with radio, one of the most powerful things in radio is what people who work in radio call the theater of the mind.
Yep.
And you and I know exactly what that means. I mean, I can sit here and say, well, let's say if you wanted to do a TV commercial that had 1,000 dancing camels.
Yeah.
Chances are you're gonna need a whole bunch of computer programmers. Maybe you film a real camel and then you have computer programmers. Well, that's a film crew, that's probably a caterer, you got a wrangler who's taking care of the camel, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. I mean, you're into it for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars just to produce this commercial. But when it comes to radio, I can sit here and go, well, I want a radio commercial with 1,000 dancing camels. I just did it.
Yeah.
But you could be thinking of, say, camels in top hat and tails.
Mm,
I could be thinking of camels like Vegas showgirls or maybe hip hop dancers with balloon pants or something like that. My imagination can take over at that point, and I can see what I want to see, and I'll be just as right as you are
sure.
seeing what you want to see. And that's the part that I think that has been left by the wayside, and so many people just don't leverage that with radio. I mean, TV's TV, video's video. I'm gonna show you a picture, period, that's it. You are constrained by these 4 walls of your screen, but radio gives you carte blanche to do whatever you want.
Yeah. It's an amazing medium. It's been my favorite because it's so portable.
Yeah.
I would say most people who listen to me on the radio today are in their vehicles. People don't
Okay.
sit in their living room anymore with their big radio set. That's what it was
Right.
called,
Right.
radio set, and they would turn it on, and it would take a while to warm up, and they would listen to a radio show much like when you and I grew up, we watched TV shows.
Right.
And to an extent, we still do that today in America, watching television programs, not like you and I did when we were young, and our parents would have listened to radio. Um, in the living room, and then eventually it would go to a kitchen and a bedroom and into vehicles, and that's where a lot of people listen to radio now, which makes a lot of sense because when you're driving, you can't be doing a lot of social media things because
Right.
you should be driving. So, if you're driving alone, you might want someone with you, and that might be talk radio.
Mhm. Mhm. And especially at those times that you're talking about, chances are you're gonna wanna know where's the big accident to avoid. Well,
Mhm,
only local radio is going to give you the updates, the traffic updates or the local news, the local weather, especially, how's the rest of the day gonna be? How is it gonna start pouring on my commute? All those things, I'm sorry, but if you're listening to satellite or if you're listening to,
mm.
something that's pre-programmed, you're not gonna get that.
Yeah, and people often love their local politics, especially conservative talk radio station
Yeah.
listeners. They love their politics, whether it's international, national, or local, and that's really what you get on those types of radio stations. Honestly, I would say music broadcast stations are the ones that can be replaced before a local news talk station.
You could, yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. The one there's an element to marketing and advertising that a lot of people, especially in radio or any kind of broadcast medium, will overlook.
Mm,
And I think it's probably one of the most powerful ones. If your business is ever visited by somebody who's talking about radio, one of the things they're going to talk about is the total people who are listening.
yeah.
We've got 50,000 listeners and the next closest one is only 25,000. I would argue with you that when it comes to advertising, repetition is how advertising works, hearing the ad over and over and over again. The way you achieve that is through time spent listening. Not just how many listeners, but how long are they listening? The longer people listen, the greater the chance that they're going to hear your message twice,
Yes.
3 times, 4 times. You know what one of the biggest draws, one of the biggest formats for, and it's called TSL, time spent listening. Um, One of the biggest draws of TSL is conservative talk.
Yes.
There are
Yes.
a couple others. There are a couple other formats. Christian conservative or Christian, contemporary
Yep.
Christian
Yep.
and sports talk radio, and classic rock. A lot of those will have people just don't bounce around the dial at that point. Those are the top formats where people will dial it in and leave it. And the TSL is off the charts. And I think the one that absolutely leads the way is conservative talk.
I totally agree. Today, I got off a phone call with a client of mine that does it's a home service company,
Mhm.
over $150 million a year in
Yeah.
revenue, good sized company. And I asked him, I said, if you were to do it over again, "Would you do radio again?" And he said, "Absolutely."
Mm,
But what he would do different from when he first started doing spot radio, okay,
mm,
that
mhm.
means 30 and 60-second commercials,
Sure,
spot
sure.
radio, he said he would own one station first, and then if saturate, go to another one. So instead of diversifying and being on 5 or 10 stations with a spot here and a spot there,
Right,
he would be the plumbing company, the roofer, the foundation company on any station, whether it's a small one or a big one. It almost doesn't matter because of the repetitiveness, the frequency. You end up owning that station. You are that plumber or the HVAC guy on that station. That's what you get
right.
known for.
Right. Yep, yep.
Yep.
That's another way of looking at TSL.
Mhm.
If you can't if the TSL isn't there, stay on the radio station because it's not just time spent listening, but people will have their top, say, 3 stations. And if they're constantly coming back to that one that you're on, you're gonna catch them. You're going to catch them. And instead of spreading out your budget, if you've got $100, $10 on 10 stations isn't gonna get you very far.
Nope. No,
But
don't
a
do it.
100 bucks on one station, you're gonna be killing it.
Absolutely, and then
Now,
some
please
other
don't quote me on those numbers because I
yeah,
don't there are very few people who are out there doing 100 or $10 spots. But what I'm saying is, spreading it out versus putting all your, in this case, eggs in one basket, heck yeah, that's the way to go.
another great strategy that I've learned over time with my clients on conservative talk radio is
Mm, mhm,
if you saturate a conservative talk radio station in town, don't spend the next dollar on FM music radio, go to the other conservative talk, because what they do is the conservative listener, if there's 4 of them in town, 4 stations, they will go from one station to the next, to the next, to the next. So instead of now just being the king of that one station, you are now king of a format, which
mhm.
is conservative talk radio. And that would be a smart move.
It's very much akin to, like, what you said earlier about my emails, that you see them, you get them all the time.
Yep.
I only email 3 times a week.
Gosh, it seems like 3 times a day.
But that's the perception. That's the perception you want.
Yes, you're always
Okay?
there,
I
front and center,
want
front and center.
I
Uh-huh.
you know, I want my recipients to think, "Man, Nick is just, I get so many emails from him." No, you get one Tuesday, you get one Thursday, and you get one Saturday. That's all
Yep,
I do. But yet I have that quote unquote reputation or that appearance of constantly being in the inbox. The same thing for radio. When you find that sweet spot that people know you. I mean, that's top of mind awareness. That's a whole nother discussion that we would need like two more episodes of your podcast to cover.
yep, yep,
All that kind of stuff. That's the sweet spot when you have become a person in the life of the listener. You've made it. You've
you have.
absolutely made it.
So, there's 3 words that go together a lot: know, like, and trust.
Mhm.
Do you know the most important word out of all 3? Which is the most
Mhm.
important word? Is it know,
Mhm.
like, or trust? Come on, it's easy. Is it know, like, or trust? What's the most important one? If you had to get rid of 2 of the words,
Right.
you can only be known for one. Is it the know, like, or trust?
Trust.
No, the know.
But
Because if they
no,
don't know you, the
exactly.
trust doesn't mean
They
squat.
don't know you.
So,
Exactly.
I'm getting to the point is any publicity is good publicity, right? And so but the know, like, and trust, we've heard this forever, and, whether you're doing something digitally online or on radio, the know, like, and trust is critical. They've gotta know you, first off,
Right.
like you is important, and
That could go
trust you
50-50.
is
You know?
important. Yeah, and so when you get the know, like, and trust, and they keep hearing your message over and over again, you will be that go-to person. But I do wanna bring this up about radio advertising. So, there's regular spot advertising where you don't get a chance really to get a call to action. It's kinda hard because it's short, 30 or 60, and
Right.
most spots
Right.
are 30s. There's just not a lot of time there. But what's nice about the long form, an hour-long show, is you can
Mm.
get a call to action, and I feel if you're gonna spend money on radio, let's say the radio commercials cost $50 a spot on the station you're looking at.
Okay.
Okay. But to buy an hour time is only $375. What's the better value per minute? Well, you don't even do the math. It's the 375
Sure.
for the hour. But also you get to tell a story about you and your company and a call to action. Think of like an infomercial, right, Nick? An infomercial where you're like, "Hey, the first 10 people will get this offer that we don't offer anywhere else, and we're gonna throw in a free item." People respond to that with a phone number right now. Instead of waiting for a long campaign to finally kick in when someone needs what you've been talking about, you create need in a direct response 1-hour show. Create it.
And that would be getting back to what I was talking about earlier. That would be the extension of the top of mind awareness kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are people who are looking for what you have to offer right now.
Right now.
Whether it's in a crisis situation or it's, "Oh, wouldn't this be nice if," I mean, there are different stages
Mhm.
of need. But and with the long form, you have that time where you can develop that relationship. And, it's one thing, no is a very nebulous area. Just because they've heard of you or just because, "Oh, yeah, no, I know him.
Mhm.
I know her. I know them. I know those guys." That's a very different kind of no. And that's the no that is going to lead to the like and the trust. And you don't get, and like you said, you don't get that in 30 seconds. Maybe 60, you can, if you buy enough 60s and cram them in together, and hopefully they're listening for 10, 15 years. Okay.
Yeah.
But the 60-minute show, like you said, the long form, that's when, I mean, you can talk about your kids at that point. You can
Mhm.
talk about, we were on this job and boy, this guy, he slipped and fell and he ended up in his waist in mud. And, I mean, you can talk about the
Yep.
disasters, you can talk about anything. And when people get to know you in that respect, that's a whole different animal. There was one time, do you remember, uh, we did a bit. I was the news sidekick, guy, okay, to the morning show. I was the news sidekick.
Yep.
We got into a discussion, and just for the heck of it, I picked the position that I didn't like bacon, okay?
Okay.
I was like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not a big bacon fan. I'm just not big on it. Not It was 3.5 years later, I'm at a live remote, and this guy walks up to me and goes, "You don't like bacon." And I was like, "Wow, you
Stuck.
remember that."
Yeah.
And you're not gonna get that in a 30 or a 60-second ad. When you develop that type
Yep.
of relationship over the long form I like it. I like it a lot.
Yep. A lot of people say that radio today doesn't work like
Mhm.
it used to.
Right.
And here's where I challenge people. I'm like, if it doesn't work, then why is Apple, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, the largest HVAC company, largest furniture store in your town, why do they do it?
Mhm.
Because it does work. And I wanna challenge people. When you think about the largest furniture store in town or the largest 3,
'Kay.
and air conditioning companies and plumbers and roofers, and attorneys, um, ask where they're advertising, and radio will come up. All the large ones, the top ones, not just large
Yeah.
ones, the ones that are on top, and that is no coincidence. So if you wanna be a leader in your space, in your marketplace, you need to be on radio, and you should probably be on television too.
Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
always the case. They it's a success route, and every contractor, home service company I talk to that's a leader in their market, every one of them is doing mass media. Every one of them, radio and television. They may even still do some newspaper here and there. Probably
For the
are,
community. Yep. Mhm.
okay? And of course, they're doing online things and so forth, but they will not give up their positioning on radio, and they're probably on a number of radio stations. and it just is what it is. And I find it interesting when social media came in and all this digital space stuff came in, is space stuff, because it's endless. It's a galaxy. You can keep adding digital. There is no
Right,
end.
right, right.
Um, a lot of people just kind of forgot about advertising on radio, television, and direct mail. For goodness sakes, we didn't talk about direct mail.
Mm,
Direct mail, everyone sells a mailbox. Speaking of the government hasn't shut that sucker down. There's still a postal service, everybody.
yes,
My
but they
Yeah,
own the mailbox. You pay for it, you put it in, but they own the mailbox,
that's right.
remember?
That's right. They do, and you just can't walk up to someone's mailbox and put something in. That's actually
That's
against
right.
the law.
That's right.
It has to go through the system, and you've presumably paid something for
Right.
that mail. And, when you think about it, while everyone's scrambling online, which is fine because you and I do all kinds of stuff online, it's okay to scramble online. Don't forget, every home has a mailbox. Every car has a radio.
Mhm.
Every home has a TV.
Yep.
These things were huge when we were young, and they're still relevant today. Here's the opportunity, though, for the business owners who are watching this, Nick.
Yeah.
You can probably afford direct mail, do that. You might be able to afford radio, do that. And if you can afford TV, do that. If you want to be the best in your space, in your marketplace. If you just want to be a little player and you don't want to be big, you just do stuff online because it's easy. It's easy. You can do it from your living room. But if you really want to be a player in your space, in your marketplace, you got to do the big stuff.
Yeah, and like you were saying, radio, TV, those are still foundational elements.
Mhm.
I mean, like you said, why are the big guys still doing it?
Mhm.
I remember there was a salesperson at one of our radio stations where I used to work. Somebody was, "Oh, you know what? I tried radio and I don't know. Does radio even work anymore?" And he'd be like, "Well, let's do this. Let's do this. Do you have $100? Do you have $100 bill on you?" And, chances are the business owner's like, "Yeah, I got $100 bill." Okay, let me call in to the studio. They'll put me on the air, and I'll say the next person who pulls into your parking lot gets $100.
Mm.
Is nobody gonna pull in, or are we gonna have a wreck in the driveway?
Hopefully a wreck.
Exactly. So, okay, so now you agree with me. Radio works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So don't tell me it doesn't work then what we need to do is we just need to find out that right quote unquote $100 offer.
Mhm.
Okay. For what it is that you want to sell. Are you talking about curio cabinets? Are we talking about recliners this week? Are we talking about, Thursday night steak night? I mean, what is it that you want to get across to our listeners? Let's find that right offer, and let's just stick with the analogy, and hopefully we'll have a wreck in the driveway as opposed to nobody pulling in. It
Yeah.
works. If you
Yeah.
do it
And
right, it works.
and you're absolutely correct. There are people out there listening and they're in the car. And I'll tell you what's really, really great today. And it could have been a huge, huge problem for what I do with direct response radio, but it actually worked out well. So years ago, a lot of people would listen in their garage, in their kitchen, and so forth before there were other options with the internet.
Yeah.
But the
Yep.
car still has the radio. It could be a 1980 Buick or a 2025 Toyota, okay? They have radios, AM and FM. Luckily, we can now call from our car, which means direct response radio works from where the radio is. So years ago, the phone was screwed to the kitchen wall and you couldn't call from your car. You'd listen in the car, but you couldn't do that literal call to action. Call now to
Mhm.
get one of these 10 opportunities. So with what we do with direct response radio, Nick, is great because we have the mix of both technologies. People can listen in their car, which is what they often do because they can't be on their iPad or computer or phone
Right.
because they're
Right.
driving, please everybody. They're listening, but they have their phone and they can either pick up their phone or better yet, they can talk to the car today and have the phone or the car dial the phone for that offer.
Right.
And bingo. and you've got the best of all worlds because you do have a lot of people driving around. So
Well, that's before you lose that point. That's one of the other big surveys that the RAB puts out every year. That what is it? 60%, 80% of all buying decisions, a lot of them are made in the car on the way. They specifically have a stat for this, that they're made in the car on the way to the store. So,
wow.
yeah, radio is timely and immediate. It is
Yes.
long term and it is in the moment at the same time. There's a lot of buying decision that's made in the car on the way if they hear your ad. It can influence up to the last minute.
I get a lot of cravings for donuts when I drive, so I think you're right.
Imagine that.
And, that's why billboards are good too because there's a
That's
lot of
right.
traffic. So, I'm in Houston, Texas.
Yeah,
Over 5,000,000 people live in the 4th largest city. 5,000,000.
yeah.
All you need is a small percentage of people driving on the highways and byways to be listening to the radio to your message. You
Yeah.
so, um, the bigger the market, not necessarily more listeners because you're gonna have more radio stations, and bigger signals. In a small market, Nick, this is true. In a small market, it can work equally as well, and the value could be really good because the cost to advertise would be less as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And to
Yeah.
go along with your long format, that long format is going to be at the exact same time,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
being able to be in that repetitive mode there, that also compounds on it. I mean, there are some people who do the old spot, the spot advertising,
Mhm.
and one of the things that I used to advise is if they didn't have much of a budget, pick 1, 2, maybe 3 weather sponsors,
Sure.
but stick to those times. Don't
Boom,
be
boom, boom. Yep.
sprinkled throughout the morning, throughout the 5 days of the
Be
week.
consistent.
Pick the 8:20 on Monday, pick the 7:40 on Tuesday, and pick the 6:50 on Thursday. And those 3, you own it
Yeah.
because you're going to get the same people at the same time over and over and
Over and
over
over again.
again.
And that's
And
the
you
most important thing, repeating that message to the same person.
did you also notice what I just did? They hear your message 3 times a week.
Yes.
You get the same 3 emails a week that
3.
you get from me, and you tell me, "Nick, you're all over the place."
I know. It seems
That becomes the perception.
exactly.
Yeah.
I hear you over and over and over again. I even get people saying that they've heard me on stations we're not on, which is hilarious. But it's because people are wrong, which is fine. They can be wrong. And I'll get asked by a home service professional who's interested in doing a long form show, a direct response, long form radio show.
Okay.
They'll ask me, Nick, how long will it take for the phone to start ringing? And I say, even though we haven't been on in, let's say, Las Vegas before, which we have, but let's say we hadn't been on in Las Vegas, because I can take the show anywhere I want.
Okay.
I will tell them, almost to the point of promise, that the phone will ring that first day.
Mhm.
Because it's not an ad, it is a direct response. Think of the Thigh Master or a Blender infomercial. When that is aired at 3 o'clock in the morning, they know the phone will ring. It's
Right,
designed to. The only
right,
reason why it wouldn't is because the station's not on the air. It's the only reason. So if the transmitter goes down, yeah.
right.
But if it's on the air, the phone will ring. We've never, ever done a radio show ever in the decades we've been doing this, Nick, ever where we didn't get phone calls.
Yep.
Here's the cool thing. That's week 1. So it'll always air on that station in Vegas on Saturday at noon.
Right.
The next Saturday, we air again. The people who didn't call the first time heard it again. Some call, some don't. Again, the 3rd week, 4th week. Eventually, some people who have been kind of just testing the waters, kind of
Right.
staying back because 'cause they're not ones to be an early adopter to this, right?
Right.
They're on the end, on the back. They may engage 2 later, and usually when they call, they're like, "Yeah, first time caller, long time fan."
There we go.
And, because some people really need to get to know, like, and trust over time. Other people are like, "I already trust the radio station. You're on the radio
Yes.
station. I'm
Yes.
good. Let's go."
That's
The
huge.
station has spent decades with these people, decades, and that's
Yep.
what you have to remember. I ask people all the time, if you are selling a hammer, okay,
Okay.
at Home Depot, and someone goes in to buy the hammer, are they buying the hammer or Home Depot? Think about it. They're buying Home Depot first.
Mhm.
Home Depot is a store. They've been there before. They've been going for 20, 30 years. They know if there's a problem with the hammer, they'll go back to Home Depot. That's Home Depot's hammer. Even though it says
Right.
Acme on the handle. No, 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 no. I don't know Acme. I trust Home Depot. Same with Lowe's, same with Walmart, same with Target, same with Amazon. I
Right.
know when I buy something from Amazon, I am safe. Same thing with radio. It's that simple.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Yeah. I call it magic.
It
It's magic.
is, and oh gosh, see, now you got me.
What?
Oh gosh, there is no better I'll tell you, there is no better place to work. I found there's no better place to work than on a radio station. I loved, and don't take this the wrong way because it's so easy to mix up this thing. I loved the energy and the electricity in the air. And I don't mean that because we've got, 100,000 watts running through the antenna. What I mean is there is an energy and stuff like that. And I especially love what you said about the radio station's been there for decades.
Mhm.
Okay. The perception is, Jim, since you're on that station, you hang out with the morning show, you hang out with the afternoon drive show. All of you guys are one big happy family, and you got the Christmas party at the end of the year and stuff like that, and you hang out with those guys, and it's that know, like, and trust of transitivity.
Yes.
If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? You cash in on that, and that rubs off on you. The station rubs off on the
Yes.
show, and it just
Yes, you are the
yeah.
station,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
so you can go a couple steps further, Nick, as well. So, I produce unique programs for contractors in any city, like I said, Vegas,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, New York, Chicago, whatever.
Right.
So picture this, we can produce a generic type show that talks about that air conditioning contractor in Las Vegas,
Okay.
okay? So it's custom to that. If we're only on one station versus multiple, we can drill down deeper. So what I'll do is I'll listen to the radio station, which I can do now online. So I'll get a feel for the different personalities on the station, maybe some promotion they're running for 6 months or longer on the station.
Mm,
And because I host the show for the contractor, I can pepper this stuff in. It sounds like I'm in the freaking studio. Do you get what I'm
sure.
talking about?
Sure.
Because now I'm talking about the same thing the afternoon and morning guy's talking about.
Right.
Now, if you're on multiple stations in the market, now it's a little more difficult. Might be better to do a generic one, but you still talk about Vegas. You still talk about things. Maybe something's going on there that isn't too timely, but you can talk about it. Maybe it's the traffic on the strip. Okay, well, it's always bad at a certain hour. You can talk about that. So they know it's not just something being beamed in, even though it kind of is. It sounds
Right.
like we're part of the town. Gosh, it's another hot one today. Well, yeah, we're airing it in July. It's Vegas, of course. Well, but they don't think about that. And yeah, it is hot. So they're like, "Oh yeah, they're here." These little things make a difference.
Yeah.
And you're so right. People trust the radio station. That's why when you advertise, especially with a long form show, you it's like if you put a table up in Home Depot, and sometimes when you walk into Home Depot, you'll see it. The reason why there's people selling different things at a table is because they've leased space from Home Depot inside their store to sell generators or something
Right.
in conjunction with Home Depot. But you automatically trust the guy at the table now versus if he was at a table on the side of the road. Now Bubba's all by himself. But when Bubba's inside Home Depot, now he's not Bubba. Now
Right.
he's Bill. And Bill, we'll call him William because he's inside Home Depot.
That's
And
right.
William's no longer Bill, Billy, or Bubba. He is part of Home Depot. And I know the Home Depot wouldn't have some schlep in here. Well, same thing on the radio. The radio station's not going to have some schlep on the air. That's simple.
That's right. That's right. And like I said, it transfers over. So the folks that you know in the morning, now here's Jim and the HVAC guy, or Jim and the plumber, or Jim and the
Yeah.
electrician. They're all there. They're all there. Yep.
Yep. And I like to say, direct response radio is the best kept secret in advertising today. You've heard of the expression, um, hiding in plain sight. I think that's the expression, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like, it's right there. I don't see it. The same thing with radio, right? It's right there. There's a receiver in your car or truck. There's radio stations all over town.
Right.
And something we haven't touched upon, they're not just broadcasting, they're also online. So your message can be heard on your phone, your iPad, your computer, because almost all radio stations now stream. Let's talk a little bit about that. Streaming
Yeah.
is important today because for the people who love the radio station who can't tune it in for some reason on the radio can actually listen on their device.
Or if they just want to have their phone in their back pocket, pop their earbuds in while they're pulling the
Yep,
weeds in the garden in the backyard. I mean, the neighbors don't like it when you put those 50,000-watt speakers up in your second floor and then go blasting it into the backyard. They're not too hip to that. But if you have your phone, you can
yep,
listen to whatever you want right there.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, they're listening to that stream of their favorite station that they're loyal to,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's just it. If you can always remember loyalty to the station and then the know, like, and trust, those 4 words, it's all you have to know.
Yeah.
It's simple.
There's a word for that in radio parlance, and I know you know it. Your P1s. Your P1s. And typically when it comes to something like, especially conservative talk,
Yep.
people stick with it. They stay on that radio station. They don't bounce around too
No.
much.
Nope.
Even if there are other ones in like we talked earlier, what happens if there are 3 or 4 other
Yeah.
talk radio stations in the market? You
Yep.
gotta have a pretty big market for that.
You do, and
Yeah,
people will always have a favorite out of their 3 or 4.
exactly. That's why
Um
they're P1s.
Yep.
Okay. Now, a P1 on this station is a P2 or a P3 on these stations over here,
Sure.
but they've always got their favorite. You're
Always got their
absolutely right.
favorite.
Mhm.
No, absolutely. And, I think when it comes to talk radio, Nick, I think being loyal and having a favorite, talk radio station is different than someone saying, "I've got a favorite music station." I don't think that exists. I think for the most part, music's music. Now, if you have a great
Exactly.
morning show guy or gal or afternoon, which I don't think is the case as much as it used to be,
Right?
people would tune in to that because that can be extremely entertaining and you get to know the host of the show. And if they're really good, that's entertainment. It's kind of like the Tonight Show without the TV part. It's like, okay, it's the Jimmy Fallon in my market on the radio.
Right. Right,
I
that's the competition. I mean, when you look at it, you nailed it. I'm sorry, but, Taylor Swift is Taylor Swift. It
Yep.
doesn't matter what station she's on, it's the same song.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Why do you listen to that station over that station? Because of the morning show, because of the afternoon show, because of whatever the case may be. You've got your favorite. But if there's something you don't like, you're gonna bounce a lot faster to your second favorite or your third favorite. That's not the case when it comes to something like talk radio or one of the ones that
Sure.
has the TSL like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, something that just came to mind, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. There's radio commercials,
Mhm.
and then there's a radio commercial. Now, you're not gonna follow me on this, but you'll get it when I say this. So indirect response radio, and, this is like an art for me, right? This is what I do. It's like a dance or I'm a sculptor, and I sculpt each one individually. Each, program is specifically designed. This is important to understand for everybody who's listening and watching this. You can have a radio show. Let's say you're listening to the morning show and they're doing a skit, which is, or, they're talking about what they did on the weekend and so forth. And they're
Right.
like, "We'll be right back right after this with the latest from Taylor Swift," and they go to commercial. What's great about the direct response long form show, it is a commercial. Let's do the TV version. I'm watching a TV show. I don't know, some popular TV show, and they break for commercial. The TV show didn't used to be a commercial. Now they're putting product placement. But for the most part, the TV
Right.
show, we'll go back in time. Happy Days. Da 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 happy days, right? We'll be right back. Okay. They go to commercial and you're selling, GM products and Coke. And then you come out and it's the entertainment. An infomercial on TV is the ad. It's the entertainment. It's the entertainment and it's the ad. So when you're watching for the Thigh Master, right? Or the new fishing pole or whatever, you're entertained by what they're talking about in that product, and they don't have to break to commercial. The whole thing is a commercial.
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing when you're on a long form direct response show, you are an infotainment land. You're informing and you're entertaining, and the whole hour is where your advertising dollars going. You don't have to wait for the DJ to stop to play your 30-second spot. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes. You're think of it as the TV version would be, say, Home Shopping Network or
Yep.
QVC.
Yep.
That's the
Exactly.
whole thing,
Yep.
okay? The whole thing is that hour is dedicated to that ring or that watch or that
Yep.
blender or the okay? So you're gonna get down to the details of whatever it is they're talking about. But that's what when it especially oh god, that's why I love this about when you're doing this with, people in the home services, vertical. That's what people are looking for.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be looking at dropping 20, 30, 50, $70,000 and they wanna know, "Okay, who's gonna get my money and what are they who's" and again, they might be they can sit there and talk about, well, who's the most experienced and who's been doing this and who's got the skills and they're talking know, like, and trust. That's what they
Absolutely.
really mean is know, like, and trust. And if you're
Always.
not coming across that way and you've got the perfect opportunity in that hour-long show to come across with that, yes, you're gonna demonstrate a little bit of your expertise. Yes, you're going to show us, that you know what you're talking about, you're up on the codes and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Has anybody I gotta ask you a question. Has anybody ever asked a contractor, "Did you what was your score on the last,
Yeah.
codes
Test.
test
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
took?"
No. No.
Nobody asked that.
No one asks their doctor that, by the way, either. As long
Yeah,
as the doctor has a license to operate, they don't say, "Where'd you come in your class?"
that's right. But the point being, it's everything else that they have to be comfortable with.
It's the heart, it's the feel, isn't it though? It's
Yeah,
it's it's the, "I trust this person," or, "I went to the same school they went to. They live in my neighborhood." They believe in what I believe, and that's why conservative talk is good because guess what? If you're on conservative talk, you must be conservative. You're already in a group. Maybe you're
right, right,
alienating the liberals. Oh, well, you gotta pick your lane.
right.
Well, it's true.
Hey, look, if you're
Same
not
with Christian talk radio. It's true.
you're going to make 50% mad. That's all there is to it. You know,
Or
you're
or you don't appeal to them. All right, I'll give you a great example. There's this guy I know, and I've actually done work with him before, and he's helped promote my business. His name is Dave Ramsey. Dave
mhm,
Ramsey is on over 600 radio stations nationwide. Dave Ramsey makes no bones about it. He's conservative and he's Christian.
mhm,
And when I say makes no bones about it, he preaches that.
yeah,
Is that good or bad? He's doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on something, and so the people who believe in he being a Christian, he being a conservative, he also markets very well through the church.
mhm,
He owns that space.
yeah,
He has, if I'm not mistaken, he's the second most listened to radio show host in the country, and he talks about cutting up credit cards. But he's got a specific audience, and he built it on radio, starting in Nashville with one station, now over 600 stations. It's a
Yep.
crazy story.
Yep.
True.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was a program director, we carried him.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And
that was a local show. We were, like, 45 miles away from him. I
okay.
was just outside of Nashville. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he's on everywhere, and you're likely to bump into him if you do listen to uh, conservative talk or other talk. And now he's done a great job of putting video and audio all over the internet too, which
Yeah.
is great. And he's a fantastic marketer. But it it goes to show that if you know your audience and you're not afraid to identify with them, which you never should be, don't worry about alienating people. Chances are the libs aren't listening to conservative talk. You're not going to bother them. Don't worry about it. And plus, if you wanted to buy liberal talk radio, it doesn't exist. There's
Yeah,
only
well, it did for a
conservative talk.
very brief moment in time,
It did, yeah, it did.
but
But
they couldn't sell it.
you know, I mean, NPR is the closest thing you're going to get. You're not going to be able to get on there with a 1-hour show. So, it just doesn't exist, and it's really a great place, and even if you aren't a conservative, okay, you should still advertise there
Yeah.
because they're a good customer. Don't do what a lot of people do, everybody, and that is, "I don't listen to the radio, so I don't think I should spend money there." That is a foolish thing because if someone told me to invest in Xbox, which, by the way, I don't own one, I don't play video games. As
Right.
crazy as that may sound, I'm a guy in my late 50s and I don't play video games. Whatever. Okay. That doesn't mean it couldn't be a good investment. As a matter of fact,
Right.
most people would say, "You don't play video? You don't know what Xbox?" I know what it is, just like people know what radio is, but I don't think it's relevant. As a matter of fact, I don't know a lot of people in my demographic that use that product. That doesn't mean there isn't an opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I trust me, bell bottoms used to be all the rage.
Well, because you're
I
old.
I still don't have a pair of bell bottoms,
Yeah.
okay? But had you invested at the right time, it would have made sense.
Ab absolutely,
Just
and
because it's not for you doesn't mean it's not right for, say, 30 million other people.
exactly, and the ironic thing is the people who often say it's not for them, they don't consume that. Maybe it's a 38-year-old HVAC owner.
Okay.
Who's your customer? You? Or would you like it to be your dad?
Yeah.
Hmm, yeah, maybe that 50, 60-year-old guy would be good. He's
Yeah.
listening to radio. Appeal to your customer, not your friends. That's all I'm saying, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you being the 38-year-old HVAC owner, I know where you're gonna go if you have problems with your air conditioning. You're gonna go to your own company.
Yes.
Okay. So that's already a done deal. The
Yep.
problem is your one job is not going to keep the company afloat.
Exactly. So just know who your customer is. I mean, if if I thought that there was a great opportunity to own nail salons, I might invest in that. I
Mhm.
know that I'm not a customer, and Nick, I'm not. Let me see your nails. I'm not sure if you. Yeah, you're not a customer. So you don't do the French cut.
Nah.
Okay, okay. Um. Anyway, it's could be very viable. You've got to think like a business person. Don't be so closed off. You've got to open your mind and say, "Okay, I'm an HVAC company. I'm a plumber. I'm a roofer. Who do I want to sell to?
Right. Who do I want calling me?
Who do I want calling me? Who do I want to have trust me? Who has the money?" And here's what a lot of people don't understand. They're like, "That 65-year-old guy's retired." Yeah, and he's sitting on 1.8 million in his 401k. His house is paid for. He's getting a pension from the government and he's getting Social Security.
Right.
And what's the question? Because the guy who you're trying to get, who's 38 years old, has 4 kids, lives in a 5,000 square foot home with no furniture, has 2 cars he can't afford, and he can't afford to get something fixed as easily as the guy who's home at 65 years old all the time, who's going to make sure that that paid for house is as comfortable as possible.
Or getting back to your nail salon analogy, okay? I'm one person. I'm not a customer. I was swapping out hydraulic lines earlier today, okay? I don't want fancy nails if I'm going to be swapping out hydraulic lines, but you know what? I've got 2 daughters that are all about their nails, and that's twice as many customers as me by myself.
Yeah,
Why would I exclude them?
exactly.
You know?
And so know your customer. And once you understand your customer, then you can make a decision. So if you're selling items that appeal to 15 to 25-year-olds,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of places other than radio to do that. However, contemporary radio, top 40 radio, music could be a good place, actually.
Mhm. Mhm.
Trust me, when Taylor Swift is coming to town, I guarantee you they're promoting that on music radio stations. And I guarantee you they're probably not doing it on conservative talk radio.
Right.
They're probably not. But I guarantee you that top 40 station, all of the contemporary hit radio stations in town have something to say about Taylor Swift coming to town. And if the Beatles were still playing, which I don't think they are,
Wow.
love the Beatles. If the Beatles were, trust me, all the classic rock stations and the top 40 state, actually every radio station would be talking about that. So sorry about that. That's a bad example because it's the Beatles. But if it's if it's an old rock band, all right, one from the 80s that's coming to town, it's going to
Right.
be on the classic rock station. They're going to be talking about it. They
Yeah.
just are.
Yeah.
And it know your audience. It's that simple. Know where they are and, so I was on Facebook a week ago or so, and somebody was saying I was out of touch because I was talking about radio, advertising on radio with direct response.
Right.
And he's like, "Jim, didn't you hear, like, radio's not on the air anymore?" I'm like, "Okay." He you know, he he was kind of out of touch, I think. So, I asked him, I said now this is a contractor, and I
Mhm.
asked him, I said, "Who is your target demographic?" I I couldn't see him because it wasn't on video, but I know he was doing this. And then he
Right.
typed back, 25 to 50, I think. That was the kind of the answer. And I'm like, "You don't know?" And then he sent back a message saying, "Why do you make me feel ignorant?" That's what he said. And I'm like, "I don't know if the shoe fits. I don't know." I mean, it's how do you how do you have such a big range? And understand, this is a home service provider. As
Right.
soon as you say 25 years old, something doesn't sound right. I don't care what you're providing in a home. Most 25-year-olds, if they do own a home, which most don't anymore, not
Right.
even close,
Right.
but if they do, they're not even that set. They're on very, very weak legs, very shaky legs. 25. They don't even know their own demographic
Right.
customer.
Wow.
I think you need to start there, right?
Yeah, you know what? One of the things that radio doesn't get a fair shake at
Mm,
is demographics. In other words, especially when it comes to that perspective, how do you know that radio is working? Well, first of all, first of all, let me give a little background to listeners. You've talked about direct response, very specifically direct response.
yep.
There's another kind of advertising called image advertising. And the image advertising, and I'm sure you're familiar with it if you've spent any time listening to radio or whatever, and that's the kind that kinda gives a story in the background, or maybe there's a little something that makes you feel good about it, or, there's no call to action at the end. There's no offer being made. They just wanna make sure that you know that they exist. That would
Mhm.
be image advertising. What
Yep.
Jim's talking about is direct response advertising. Now, it's the image advertising that's there's a place for it, and okay, right, but God, what were you just talking about a second ago? I lost my train of thought all of a sudden. You were
I was
25, you
talking
were
about
talking
the
about 25 to
demographic, 25-year-olds.
right? 25 to 50s. Um,
People not knowing their demographic.
yes. Okay, so the fair shake so what happens is especially with the advent of online and click through and all this kind of stuff, there's all this electronic way of tracking and seeing what has happened on your website, what has happened here. But you also have that in your store, but people aren't keeping records.
Yeah,
You might see those little things that you walk through that actually it's an electronic counter
yeah.
that's talking about the floor traffic and stuff like that, but they're not writing it down. They're not paying attention to it. So when they say radio doesn't work, but or the other thing is, let's say the furniture store, getting back to your furniture store analogy, they need to have a sale on lamps. They've got way too many lamps in the warehouse. They need to sell some lamps. Okay, great. How do you know if how do you know if the campaign worked or not?
If you
Very
have
simple.
less lamps.
How many lamps did you sell?
Sure.
How many lamps did you sell this time last year?
Yep.
You sold 50 lamps last year and 102 lamps this year. I'd say there was something to that. You have the answers in your inventory and in your sales. And I strongly encourage anybody out who's listening to this that has that type of store, start tracking those numbers. It's too easy for us to blow them off, but boy, they come in handy when you want to see what's working, because don't you want to invest your money
Yeah.
where it is working and cut the funds where it's not working? Wouldn't that be the smart business decision to make? But if you don't have the data to make the decision, or at least you don't, you have the data, you just haven't culled it and looked at it and seen what it's really telling you.
And sometimes it's not really specific. So I was on a phone call this week with one of my clients, big company in home service, big company in home service. And he said, Jim, I'll tell you how I know TV advertising worked. And I'll say, tell me how, because he said it's very hard to track because people see it, but there's no like, you know, it's not like electronic media where you have hits, you have visits, someone filling out a form, um,
Click-through rates, filling out
click
form, yeah,
through.
all of that stuff. You've got all those numbers
People
just
aren't even calling you
sure.
per se because you only have 30 seconds and you know it's a branding thing. It might not even be a call to action. He said, "I'll tell you how I know it worked. It's not very scientific, but when we stopped doing TV, the calls went down. When we turned TV back on, the calls went up." So it's like radio. When we track everything with tracking phone numbers with our direct response radio show. I will tell you this in certain markets, okay? And I'll tell you it's true in Houston because we've done a lot in Houston.
Okay.
If it's raining during that hour, the calls will be significantly less.
Really?
Yes. So people are on the road. I'm thinking maybe they're driving more cautiously or there's less people on the road because in Houston, it's like getting 6 inches of snow or something when it rains. For some
Gotcha.
reason, people aren't on the road as much. And if they're
Gotcha.
not on the road and they're not tuned in, well, the phone won't ring. Okay.
Right.
Just
Gotcha.
like if there was a snowstorm and no one's on the road, you're going to get less calls because right now, the majority of your listeners are in the car.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's interesting, but
Yeah.
these are things we can read. We use tracking numbers though, which are great. Here's something very interesting, which I didn't know this would happen until we actually had a number of years, really, months and years under our belt with direct response radio. Every single radio show we do around the country has a unique tracking phone number with a local area code. So the phone number is local, just like the station's local, and that's important. Don't do 800 numbers, everybody. Do a local phone number. The phone starts ringing, not immediately, because we haven't gotten into the phone number yet. And you
Mm.
can actually listen to the show and
Mhm.
watch the calls come in. But I'll tell you this 90 to 95% of the phone calls on that phone number come in during that hour.
Sure.
They don't come in an hour later. Occasionally, you'll get one here or there. Sometimes a day later,
Mm.
but usually not because just like when you're watching the infomercial, when they say there's no more left, they believe you. There ain't no more left. I decided not to call. I listen every week. I didn't call again, and I'm not gonna call, for better or for worse. But for the 15 people that did call, those aren't leads. Those are appointments to go to the home to test the water. And
Sure.
if your water is bad, we can give you or sell you this water softener for the price we quoted on the radio, and you're going to get that free year of salt on top of the free water test. And if you want a
Right.
discount on the reverse osmosis for under your kitchen sink, we'll do that too. So
Mm,
when the call comes in, it's not a lead. It is, I want the company to come out and test my water this week. The homeowner already knows they're going to get free water test to see if they have hard water, which they think they do. And they know the price, they know the deal, and they know they're going to get free salt on top of that. So they
yeah.
qualify themselves just like you would never call the Home Shopping Network or QVC or for the blender or for the Thigh Master without knowing all the details up front. The only thing you're asking when you call is, "Are you ready for my credit card number?"
Yeah.
You are. So that's the beautiful thing about long form. Nick, you educate, you educate, you educate. The phone rings, it's an appointment.
Yep. Every single time.
It's magic, man. Hey, this
But
has been
you're given it see, that's the beauty of it, like we've been talking about. That's the beauty of it because you do have that hour, that opportunity to
yeah,
build the know, like, and trust, and you get beyond the roof, or you get beyond the water system, or you get beyond you can talk about all these things, and
yeah,
you as a consumer get the full picture of the contractor, the plumber, the electrician. You get all of that, and now you're like, "Oh, okay. All right. I can relate to that guy. That's the one I wanna go with."
exactly. The know, like, and trust, the
Yeah.
warm and fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
And
Oh, talking about your TV thing.
yeah,
The guy was like, I know." There's there's another powerful thing to radio, and we've kind of alluded we've talked about it already, talking about the theater of the mind part,
mhm,
okay? We did a bridal show. We had 5 stations under our roof, all right?
yeah,
5 in a fairly small market. I think we were market 199, 200, okay? So fairly decent size, but not a huge metropolitan area, not way out in the middle of the country for, population 6,000. About 125, 150,000 in the county, okay? Had 5 radio stations, diverse, formats, had the bridal show. We ran radio on our 5 stations, and then
mhm,
I think 3 newspaper ads on the Friday, Saturday, and a half-page ad on Sunday for for the last day of the bridal show. We did a survey on how you heard about the bridal show, and fully half of the people said, and getting back to your original point, people sometimes they're not exactly sure where they got it.
nope.
Half the people said they saw our TV ad.
Yeah, 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 isn't that funny? And how many TV stations were you on? Yeah,
0.
yeah,
None.
yep, and
But
it
notice
doesn't matter, does it?
the image that they got.
Yes,
They would swear they saw it.
absolutely.
And you can't do that without planting that image.
Speaking of theater of the mind, they created a theater in their mind,
Mhm.
and,
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah.
it and it happens. It's just the way it is, and when you're on TV in their mind, which you weren't, and you're on the radio and you're in print, you are important. So here's what's really cool. You guys were advertising in print and you on all the radio stations,
All of ours, our 5.
all
Yeah.
all of your radio stations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
yet they elevated you to TV because arguably TV is kind of a master mass medium, if you will, because it has the audio and the video, and it's just it's I'm not saying it's a superior medium, it's just that it's television, right? And
Yeah.
TV's TV. So, what's interesting is they heard you, probably, maybe saw a newspaper ad, and they thought TV. Probably because they don't watch a lot of TV, but were driving that week and heard it. It's that simple.
Possibly. Yeah. Another one I mean, and this is the ultimate compliment for a creative services director, when you write an ad and the powers that be didn't like this.
No.
But when I wrote an ad and somebody called in and said, "Stop the ad, we're sold out," that means I've done
Wow.
my job, right?
Too good.
Yeah,
Stop.
exactly. But when I was working with a jewelry store in Southwest Florida, and this woman said to the owner, they were selling these little baby shoe charms.
Yeah.
And I did an ad about baby shoes that a mother who's now going to be a grandmother is giving to her daughter this little tiny baby shoe because she's going to be a new mother. And the woman walks into the jewelry store and says, "I cry every time I see your ad."
Mm,
That's the ultimate compliment
it
for
is.
radio creative. And when you guys are doing this show and you have the opportunity to, I mean, I only had 30 seconds. I think for that one, I probably had a 60. But when you guys are doing this entire 1 hour show and you talk about the various systems in the house and how stuff, I mean, there's stuff. I enjoy swinging a hammer. I'm halfway decent around a table saw. There's some things that I can do, and I enjoy that stuff. But every day I learn something new that, oh, did you realize that your air conditioning system is actually doing this? This is what's going on to the system when you have too much insulation, when there's no circulation, when there's no place for the hot air to get out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I didn't know that. And now I can see how my house operates. So many people think that, say, their house just kind of sits there, it's four walls and a roof, and it keeps you protected from the rain. It's actually a living, breathing entity. It's doing things all the time. And you finally get to tell that story because you've got more than 30 seconds. You
Yes.
finally get to tell the story of your house, and people go, "Oh, now I get it." And it's that aha, now I get it moment that they have just made a connection to you, the home services provider.
Yep. I
And when they've got that connection, you're the only person they're going to call.
You said something key.
Mm,
The only person they're gonna call. So, a lot of people will say, "Okay, Jim, so if we do this and we are going to be on the radio every week and we're gonna talk about water softeners,
okay.
and our objective is to sell a water softener." What happens when they hear us on the radio and then they go online and they hire someone else? I said, "Why would they hire someone else?" Well, we educated them. It's like when someone goes to Best Buy with their phone and then they buy it from Amazon. I said, "Who's installing it?" From Amazon. Well, I am. When I get the TV, I'll plug it in myself. I said, "Who's installing the water softener?
Or the roof.
The guy you don't know?
Right.
No, you're trust me, the homeowner who's listening is not buying the water softener only. They are buying the company and the guy. I can tell you stories, Nick, that'll blow your mind, but I know that you can see this and understand this.
Sure.
I have clients that say, one of our biggest problems with doing direct response radio with you, Jim, is when our technicians go out, they want to know why I, the owner who was on the radio, didn't show up.
Mm,
They wanted to see and they treat him like a celebrity. Every once in a while, it is the owner who goes out to do the bid,
right.
right? To talk to the
Right.
homeowner. And they're like, I listened to you on the radio because they're a freaking celebrity. They're a plumber celebrity. It's true. You know what I'm talking about.
He's got a story as well. Marcus Sheridan
Yeah.
has a story about arriving to the family, and the 8-year-old answers the door and says, "Mom, Dad, the guy on the videos are here."
Exactly. And so whether it's video online or you're on the radio, you are a celebrity. But the celebrity factor with a
Yeah.
63-year-old from radio is way bigger than a 38-year-old seeing you on video. Anyone can be on video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not anyone can be on radio or TV. And that is a fact. You need money to be on radio and TV. And also, you have to be vetted. You just can't go on TV or radio. Anybody can be online. Right now, I can grab my phone and I can go live on Facebook. I can be on YouTube. I can be on any platform, and there's no one to stop me unless I was banned by one of those platforms, which is highly unlikely. But I know when I'm on radio or television that I have to be a really good boy because
Yeah.
the fines that come down from the federal government, from the FCC, are huge. Just ask CBS with Justin Timberlake's mistake on the Super Bowl stage. I don't know if you remember that with Janet Jackson.
Uh-huh. The
The
wardrobe malfunction?
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was CBS who was broadcasting the game, and the reason why I say that is because I was, um, distributing one of my programs at a CBS radio station in Texas, and when that happened, all of a sudden, everything across radio happened too, because CBS got slapped so hard at the top, it came down all the way to everything else,
Sure.
and that's why I'm pretty sure it was on CBS. Uh, but if not, at least CBS was concerned, the CBS radio station.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were told, by the way, because of what Justin Timberlake did with Janet Jackson, we need to really be careful what we do and say because now they're watching. Because until there's a problem, people don't watch much. Whenever there's a plane accident, all of a sudden, we got to start doing things differently.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, when someone dies doing something, all of a sudden, we need bike helmets, everybody. Someone hit their head. And then all of a sudden, now everyone's got bike helmets. When I was a kid, the only one who had a bike helmet was the kid that was a little strange, and he
Right.
had to have a helmet because he fell a lot.
Right.
There
Right.
was always one of those kids in town,
Yep.
and, we put a football helmet on him or a hockey helmet.
Exactly.
We'd duct tape it around his head and say, "Okay, you go first." And, I'm a skier too. I now wear a helmet, but I grew up skiing at 60 miles an hour
Yeah.
without a helmet.
Yeah.
Hmm,
Oh, sure.
imagine that. A different time. Nick, this has been fun. I appreciate it, buddy. We should do this again,
That would be
and,
fun. Yeah.
we could probably talk for hours, and, I know we solved a lot of problems today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's peace and, across the world now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, my friend. Until next
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.